My wife found my $100,000 emergency fund and quit her job to be a stay-at-home mom. Plot twist, she wasn't even pregnant but was lying to everyone and planning a baby shower with my money. I, 32 male, have been married to Belinda, 29 female, for 3 years. We met through mutual friends at a local pub quiz night and hit it off immediately. Belinda was smart, funny, and seemed to share my values about financial responsibility. She worked as an HR manager at a mid-sized tech company while I worked as a senior software developer at a different firm. We both earned good salaries and split our expenses equally, which was one of the things that initially attracted me to her independence and financial awareness. Our courtship was pretty straightforward. We dated for 2 years before getting married, lived together for one of those years to make sure we were compatible, and had what I thought was a solid understanding of each other's values and goals. Belinda always came across as very career-oriented and practical about money. She would often talk about wanting to climb the corporate ladder and even mention getting an MBA someday. We discussed children but agreed we wanted to be more financially stable first, with both of us advancing in our careers. Before I met Belinda, I went through some really tough times financially that shaped my entire approach to money. When I was in my second year of college, my dad lost his job at a company he had worked at for 25 years. They downsized his entire department with barely any warning. Our family nearly lost everything: the house, the cars, even our health insurance. I had to drop out for a year to work full-time at 2 different jobs just to help pay bills. I remember watching my parents sell their wedding rings and my mom's family heirlooms just to keep food on the table. That experience traumatized me in many ways, but it also taught me the brutal importance of having a safety net. When I finally graduated and started my career in software development, I made sure to save aggressively. I lived like a college student for years, had roommates, drove an old car, rarely ate out, and put away as much money as I could. Over 8 years, through careful budgeting and some lucky breaks with stock options at my first company, I built up an emergency fund of $100,000. Belinda knew I had savings, as I was always upfront about having an emergency fund, but she never knew the exact amount. We kept our finances mostly separate after marriage, each contributing equally to a joint account for household expenses while maintaining our own personal accounts. We split rent, utilities, groceries, and other shared expenses 50-50. This arrangement seemed to work perfectly for us. Belinda never questioned it or suggested combining everything, and I felt secure knowing I had my safety net if anything ever went wrong. I should mention that my parents eventually recovered financially. Dad found a new job after about 18 months of unemployment, and they managed to keep the house through a loan modification. But watching their near financial ruin left a lasting impression on me. They both supported my decision to keep a solid emergency fund, even after marriage. They had seen firsthand how quickly things could fall apart. Everything was fine until last week. I was working from home, deep into coding for a major project release, when Belinda came back from work early around 2 p.m. She looked upset and was holding some bank statements she had found while cleaning our home office. These were statements I had accidentally left out after doing my monthly budget review the night before. She demanded to know why I had been hiding this much money from her, waving the papers in my face. I tried to explain that it wasn't hidden money but an emergency fund I had built up over many years, mostly before we even met. The look on her face changed from upset to calculating as she processed the amount. She kept fixating on the number, saying over and over how much we could do with that kind of money. I tried explaining again about my parents' situation and why having this safety net was so important to me, but she wasn't listening. Instead of understanding, she got increasingly agitated and angry. She said that as my wife, she should have access to all my money and that keeping this fund separate was basically the same as lying to her. Then she dropped a bombshell that made my stomach sink. She had already quit her job that morning. Just turned in her resignation without any notice. She announced that she wanted to be a stay-at-home mom and expected me to support her with my savings. She had it all planned out. We would use the emergency fund to cover our expenses while she focused on getting pregnant and preparing for motherhood. I was completely blindsided because we weren't even trying for kids. In fact, we had explicitly agreed to wait a few more years before starting a family. Just 3 months ago, we had a long conversation about our 5-year plan, where Belinda talked about wanting to reach a director position in HR before thinking about children. She had even started looking into MBA programs. This sudden change made no sense. When I refused to give her access to the emergency fund, she became almost hysterical. She started pacing around our home office, running her hands through her hair and getting more worked up by the minute. She accused me of not trusting her and said I was controlling her by withholding money. She even threatened to divorce me if I didn't agree to use the fund to support her new lifestyle. She kept insisting that being a stay-at-home mom was her dream and that I was crushing it by being selfish with my money. I tried to remain calm and reminded her that we had always split expenses equally, that this arrangement had worked perfectly for our entire relationship. I pointed out that suddenly quitting her job without any discussion wasn't fair to either of us and put us both in a difficult position. She countered by saying marriage meant sharing everything and that my emergency fund should now be our emergency fund. She started talking about all these plans she had, redecorating one of our spare rooms into a nursery, buying new furniture, taking prenatal yoga classes, and even hiring a doula eventually. When I pointed out that she wasn't even pregnant yet, she got even more upset. I stood my ground about the emergency fund, explaining that while I was happy to discuss our future plans together, making rash decisions about our finances wasn't the way to go about it. That's when she really lost it. She grabbed her purse, stormed out of the house, and peeled out of our driveway in her car. Later, she texted saying she was staying with her sister Kylie. Belinda's sister Kylie, 34 female, called me later that night and absolutely berated me for being heartless. She went on a long rant about how I was destroying Belinda's dreams of motherhood by being stingy with money. According to Kylie, I was being a terrible husband by not supporting Belinda's natural desires to focus on building our family. The whole conversation felt bizarre, especially when I mentioned that we weren't even expecting. At that point, Kylie got oddly quiet and quickly hung up. Something about her reaction felt off, but I was too overwhelmed to think about it much at the time. I called my parents to get their perspective, hoping they of all people would understand my position given what we went through years ago. To my surprise, they think I'm being too rigid and should compromise with Belinda. My mom suggested that maybe I was letting my past financial trauma control my present too much. They say marriage is about supporting each other's dreams and that I'm being unnecessarily protective of my savings. Dad even said that while he appreciated my learning from their experience, I might be taking it too far. But I can't shake the feeling that something isn't right about this whole situation. In the 3 years we've been married, Belinda has never once mentioned wanting to be a stay-at-home mom. She's always been career-focused and independent. Even when we discussed having kids in the future, she talked about wanting to use her HR experience to push for better parental leave policies at her company. This sudden decision to quit her job without any discussion feels impulsive and concerning. The way she found the bank statements and immediately jumped to quitting her job also makes me wonder if this was somehow planned. I keep replaying our past conversations in my head, trying to figure out if I missed some signs. Did she always want this and I just never noticed? Was I too focused on financial security that I ignored her dreams? But then I remember how excited she was just last month talking about a possible promotion at work, and none of this makes sense. I'm writing this because I need perspective from people who aren't emotionally involved in the situation. Am I wrong for wanting to protect my emergency fund? Should I give in to Belinda's demands to keep my marriage intact? The whole situation feels surreal, like I've stepped into some alternate reality where my pragmatic, career-oriented wife has been replaced by someone I barely recognize. I'm not sure what to do next. Update 1. First, I want to thank everyone for your support and advice on my original post. Your comments helped me realize I wasn't being unreasonable about wanting to protect my emergency fund. A lot has happened in the past 2 weeks, and none of it is good. The situation has gotten much worse than I could have imagined. Belinda still hasn't come home. She's been staying at her sister's place this whole time, only communicating through angry text messages demanding access to my savings. I tried to get her to come home and talk things out rationally, but she refused unless I agreed to her demands first. I even offered to sit down with a financial advisor together to discuss our future plans, but she dismissed the idea completely. Yesterday, I finally discovered why Kylie got so quiet during our phone conversation 2 weeks ago. It turns out Belinda has been telling her entire family that she's already pregnant. Not only that, but she's been secretly planning an elaborate baby shower and promising her family it would be the event of the year, all funded by my emergency fund. I found out in the most awkward way possible. Belinda's mother called me directly to discuss baby shower venues. She was going on about how excited she was about becoming a grandmother and started talking about specific dates and arrangements. She mentioned she had already contacted an upscale event venue that would cost nearly $5,000 just for the space. When I told her there must be some mistake because Belinda wasn't pregnant, she became confused and upset. At first, she thought I was joking, then she got angry, thinking I was trying to ruin Belinda's special moment. It took almost an hour of very uncomfortable conversation to get the full story from her. Belinda had told her entire family she was 8 weeks pregnant. She had shown them fake pregnancy tests and even created a fake ultrasound appointment card. She claimed we had been trying for months and finally got our miracle. She told them we were keeping it quiet until the first trimester was over, but she just couldn't contain her excitement with family. After that call, I started digging deeper. I checked Belinda's social media accounts, which I rarely look at. What I found was shocking. She had been posting regular pregnancy updates for weeks. There were morning sickness stories, pictures of her supposedly showing off a tiny belly bump, and posts about pregnancy cravings. She even joined several mommy groups and had been actively participating in discussions about first trimester symptoms. Some of her posts went into elaborate detail about our supposed journey to conception, complete with made-up stories about romantic dates and special moments. She wrote about how supportive I was and how we had been planning this for months. All of this was completely fabricated. We hadn't even been intimate recently due to work stress. When I confronted Belinda about this over the phone, she initially tried to deny everything. Then, when I told her I had spoken to her mother, she broke down and admitted to the lies. She said she felt pressured because all her friends were having babies, and she was worried about falling behind. Her best friend from college recently announced her third pregnancy, and apparently, this triggered something in Belinda. She thought if she could convince everyone she was pregnant, I would be forced to agree to her staying home and accessing the emergency fund. Belinda's family is divided over the situation. Her mother and sister are furious with her for lying. They feel humiliated because they had already started telling extended family members about the baby. Her mother had even started buying baby clothes and planning a grandmother blog. But her father has taken a different stance. He thinks I drove her to this by being too controlling with money. He actually suggested that Belinda's lies were somehow my fault because I wouldn't freely share my savings with her. He called me several times to lecture me about how marriage means sharing everything and that my unwillingness to support Belinda's dreams pushed her to act desperately. The more I look into things, the worse it gets. I checked our joint account and found that Belinda had withdrawn her entire share, about $15,000, before quitting her job. She had been planning this for a while, creating this elaborate lie to pressure me into supporting her. She had even started following several financial independence blogs and joined forums about becoming a stay-at-home mom. I feel completely betrayed and manipulated. I've taken some protective measures. I froze our joint account and removed her as an authorized user on my credit cards. I'm also documenting everything, screenshots of the fake pregnancy posts, the baby shower planning emails, and all our conversations. Something tells me I'm going to need this evidence later. The worst part is that some of our mutual friends are taking her side. They've been commenting supportively on her pregnancy posts, and a few have reached out to tell me I'm being cruel by not supporting her desire to have a baby. They think I'm being heartless for not understanding her biological clock anxiety. They don't seem to understand that the issue isn't about having children, it's about trust, honesty, and financial responsibility. I'm starting to question everything about our relationship now. If she could lie so elaborately about something this significant, what else might she have lied about? I'm struggling to reconcile the woman I married, the sensible, career-oriented person who talked about getting an MBA, with someone who would create such an elaborate deception to access my savings. I've contacted a lawyer to understand my options, but I haven't made any decisions yet. Right now, I'm just trying to process everything and figure out my next steps. I never imagined I would be in this situation, and honestly, I'm still in shock about how quickly everything has fallen apart. Update 2. Things have escalated beyond what I could have imagined. Last week, I started receiving calls from credit card companies about missed payments on accounts I never opened. After some investigation, I discovered Belinda had somehow managed to apply for multiple credit cards in my name. She had been using these cards to buy baby items, a crib, stroller, car seat, and countless baby clothes. She had even paid for a year's membership at an exclusive mommy wellness center. The total charges across all cards were close to $30,000. When I confronted her, her response left me speechless. She claimed she was manifesting our baby through these purchases. She said buying baby items would help make the pregnancy real, and that by refusing to support her, I was blocking her path to motherhood. I immediately filed police reports for identity theft and contacted all the credit card companies to dispute the charges. Belinda's father called me, begging me to drop the police reports. He offered to pay off the credit cards if I would just give this whole thing another chance. During all this chaos, I learned something disturbing from Belinda's cousin. Apparently, this wasn't the first time Belinda had done something like this. In her previous relationship, she had also faked a pregnancy to try to get her boyfriend to marry her. When he discovered the truth and left her, she had a complete meltdown. No one in her family had thought to warn me about this because they believed Belinda had gotten therapy and moved past it. Clearly, she hadn't. Her cousin apologized for not telling me sooner but said the family had sworn everyone to secrecy about the incident. Update 3. This will be my final update on this situation. 2 weeks ago, Belinda's family staged what they called a pregnancy support intervention at their house. They invited me under the pretense of wanting to mediate our problems. When I arrived, thinking this would be a reasonable discussion about the credit card theft and our marriage issues, I instead walked into their formal living room to find about 20 people gathered there, Belinda's immediate family, some aunts and uncles, a few of her friends, and even a spiritual advisor they had hired for the occasion. Belinda sat in the center of the room, wearing a flowy dress that made her look pregnant even though she wasn't. The spiritual advisor, a woman wearing crystals and flowing scarves, had set up some kind of altar with candles and fertility stones. The room was decorated with baby-themed items and positive affirmation posters about manifesting children. For the next hour, I had to sit there while various people took turns telling stories about their pregnancy journeys and the importance of supporting women's maternal instincts. The spiritual advisor spoke at length about manifesting babies and the importance of creating the right energy for conception. She claimed that my negative attitude about Belinda's pregnancy journey was creating blockages in her fertility energy. Belinda sat there the whole time crying about how I was destroying her chances of motherhood by being negative about her pregnancy journey. She had even prepared a presentation about how my emergency fund could be used to create the perfect nursery and support her full-time motherhood journey. Her mother had already gotten quotes from interior designers for a baby room renovation. That was the final straw for me. I stood up, thanked everyone for their concern, and announced that I had already filed for divorce. The paperwork had been in process for weeks, and Belinda would be served the next day. The room erupted in chaos. Belinda started sobbing hysterically, her mother tried to physically block me from leaving, and her father threatened to destroy my career if I went through with it. I managed to leave despite their attempts to stop me. The next day, my lawyer had Belinda served with divorce papers at her sister's house where she's still staying. To everyone's surprise, she's not contesting it. I think the reality of the criminal charges for identity theft finally sank in, and she realized she couldn't manipulate her way out of the situation. The emergency fund that started this whole mess is safe and untouched. I've learned valuable lessons about financial boundaries in relationships and the importance of complete honesty before marriage. My lawyer assures me that since the fund predates our marriage and was always kept separate, Belinda has no claim to it. I've also taken steps to protect my finances going forward, freezing my credit, changing all my accounts, and setting up fraud alerts. Belinda's family has gone quiet after the intervention disaster. I heard through mutual friends that they're now dealing with the fallout of Belinda's previous pregnancy scam becoming public knowledge in their social circle. Several family friends have come forward with stories about other times Belinda has invented elaborate lies for attention. It seems this pattern of behavior goes back further than even her cousin knew. As for the credit card debt, Belinda's father did eventually pay it off to avoid his daughter facing legal consequences. I agreed to drop the police report in exchange for the debt being cleared and a signed admission from Belinda about the identity theft, which my lawyer has safely stored away in case we need it during the divorce proceedings. Most of the baby items she bought have been returned, though some stores refused returns on custom items. I also discovered that Belinda had been lying about other things during our marriage. She never actually finished her bachelor's degree as she claimed, she dropped out one semester before graduating. Her previous job wasn't as senior as she made it sound, and she had been fired for lying on reports, not quit as she told me. I feel like I never really knew her at all. I'm done with this chapter of my life and ready to move forward. Several people have suggested I try dating again, but I'm taking time to focus on myself and heal. I've enrolled in some advanced programming courses and am channeling my energy into career growth. Thank you all for your support throughout this crazy journey. Your comments helped me stay strong when I was doubting myself.